Rent is one of the biggest expenses for many households in Australia. But in recent years, rents have been rising faster than incomes, putting pressure on renters' budgets and living standards. In this section, we will explore how rent increases affect inflation and consumer spending in the Australian economy. Inflation is the general rise in the prices of goods and services over time. It is measured by the Consumer Price Index (CPI), which tracks the changes in the prices of a basket of items that represent the average consumption of Australian households. One of the components of the CPI basket is housing, which includes rents, utilities, maintenance, and other housing-related costs. According to research firm CoreLogic, rents have risen at the fastest rate for 14 years as Australia's landlords seek to recoup costs in the face of rising interest rates and higher inflation. Rents are 9.1% higher across capital cities and are up 10.8% in regional areas compared with June 2021. In some areas, such as towns south of Adelaide and Murray Bridge, rents have increased by more than 20% in the past 2 years. Rising rents have a direct impact on inflation by increasing the cost of housing in the CPI basket. Housing accounts for about 23% of the CPI weight, so any change in housing prices has a significant effect on the overall inflation rate. According to the Australian Bureau of Statistics, housing inflation jumped to 9.5% in the September 2022 quarter, taking the annual rate to 11.3%. This was the main contributor to the acceleration of the CPI to 7.3% in the same quarter, which was the highest annual inflation rate since December 2008. Rising rents also have an indirect impact on inflation by reducing the disposable income of renters and affecting their consumption patterns. Renters typically spend a larger proportion of their income on rent than homeowners, so they have less money left over for other goods and services. This means that they may have to cut back on their spending or borrow more to maintain their living standards. This can reduce the demand for some goods and services and lower their prices, or increase the demand for cheaper alternatives and raise their prices. For example, renters may spend less on discretionary items such as entertainment, travel, clothing or eating out, and more on essentials such as groceries, utilities or transport. This can lower the inflation rate for some categories of goods and services and raise it for others. Alternatively, renters may seek cheaper housing options such as sharing accommodation, moving to cheaper areas or living with relatives. This can reduce the demand for rental properties and lower their prices, or increase the demand for other types of housing and raise their prices. The net effect of rent increases on inflation and consumer spending depends on various factors, such as the magnitude and duration of rent increases, the income and preferences of renters, the availability and affordability of alternative housing options, and the response of landlords, suppliers, and policymakers. However, it is clear that rent increases have become a major challenge for many Australian households and a key driver of inflation in the current economic environment.